If you are from South Korea or any familiar with the country, you've heard about their impossible-to-achieve beauty standards. A V-shaped face, double eyelids and big eyes, perfectly white and aligned teeth, a high-nose bridge and a slim nose, scarily pale skin, skinny legs. Some people spend thousands trying to achieve this look. Others die for it on extensive surgeries. Looking good isn't just a matter of self-esteem, but social etiquette, as you're seen as lazy and even dirty because you can't take care of yourself. I was lucky, you see, I already had most of the package naturally. I've heard more than once from other people they'd kill for my looks, but beauty always comes at a price. If you're too pretty, kids bully you throughout your childhood. They cut and pull your hair, bruise your skin, cut off and stain your clothes, then later do plastic surgery to achieve a face similar to yours, and get made fun of by other people who've done the same because they've obviously undergone plastic surgery. Go figure, right? Be born beautiful and get bullied. Be born ugly and do things to achieve beauty and get made fun of regardless. It's a system you simply can't beat. Oh no, you're wondering, but what if you decide to remain ugly or just can't afford plastic surgery? Well, worse for you. My friend Hyren was part of the group that was too poor to afford it. She's the only friend I ever made. I was bullied, and changing schools did nothing when I'm an absolute ray of sunshine. Because of bullying, misery loves company, I guess. Though in her case, lack of beauty is the matter. She had a wide square face, crooked teeth, uneven eyes, a darker skin tone. Everything people in this country seem to think it's unattractive. She was an easy target for students and teachers to bully, no matter how many times I defended her. It didn't help that, compared to me, she looked even worse to their eyes. Saddens me to see how wrong they are. Hyren is beautiful, both inside and outside. She's the kindest, most caring, most radiant person you'll ever meet, and I'll never forgive myself for letting the bitterness of others' hate turn her into a monster just because she doesn't look like a carbon copy of everyone else. Yes, I think at this point it's safe to say she is a monster. Whatever she became isn't human anymore, but I'll get to it. Since we're both high school seniors, we're close to the age most people get plastic surgery as graduation gifts, and the insecurity has been eating her away more than ever since the school year started. She had been saving up some money to get at least her eyelids done, but turns out the money wasn't nearly enough, and her parents really couldn't blow their money into it. She then turned into a legality. Surgeons that would operate minors without parental consent, or that would accept workforce as a payment, or even largely discounted unknown clinics. I tried to discourage her, I really did. She was already beautiful and would be risking her health and life. However, what was trivial to me meant the world to her, and I did everything I could to help her. From skincare products I bought to a dentist appointment for braces. By the time the beginning of summer was nearing its end, she was hiding behind thick bangs and foundation that was way too light for her face, and the bullying never stopped. Until one day, after our last half of summer vacation, Hyren came back, beautiful. She even had the thin legs I lacked, and I couldn't recognize her at first, as she was a completely different person. People were at awe not only because of her new appearance but also for the miraculous recovery. She'd had a blepharoplasty, a few different subtypes of rhinoplasty, liposuction, breast implants, dental surgery, and a drastic jaw shaving, not mentioning cheek, lip, and egiosal fillers and skin whitening treatments. That's a lot for a person to go through, especially all at once. And the worst part was being left out even by her. One day she decided to and made all arrangements to have plastic surgery and never once told me. Never once called me to say she was fine and recovering. Never once thought of telling me about her new looks. All of a sudden, I was just part of her past. Nonetheless, no questions were asked. Beauty was all that mattered, at least to them, and she finally had the confidence to be herself unapologetically, going as far as to ask a boy she liked out on a date. Though life has seasoned me, and I knew that miracles don't happen. People wouldn't change their minds about her so easily, and this ride was about to crash. I was proven right when the boy she confessed to made fun of her for being plastic. That was the end of her newfound self-esteem. She called me crying and I almost punched him square in the face. Told you I was a ray of sunshine. I tried to comfort her in every way I could, until she asked me the question that prompted me to write this story. There's no way to win, is there? No matter how hard or how effortless it comes to you, it's never good enough. We roamed through the streets mindlessly that afternoon, talking about trivial things. We both knew there was an underlying issue we had to face, however, we tried to brush it off. Politeness, you know. It hurts more if you talk about it. We parted ways when it was past dusk, and the streets were already dark. I came back home and barely slept. Hiren decided she needed to do better with her appearance. The very next day she came to school different than before. The result could be described as uncanny. You've heard of wax dolls, right? That's how she looked. The good characteristics were so emphasized that she looked unreal in a bad sense. Eyes too large, cheeks too full, breasts even bigger than before. You get the idea. She was starting to become what's known as a Gangnam Uni here in Korea. Weeks passed and I began to worry more about her. But every time I tried to talk to Hiren, she ignored me or avoided me. I could see through her facade of confidence it was all bullshit, and last week I had enough of pretending and asked a teacher to talk to her. At this point her obsession was way past unhealthy and she was risking her life and spending money God knows where it came from. That teacher had disappeared and is now officially declared as missing. At this point I didn't know what to believe anymore. Could my friend have anything to do with it? Said teacher was last seen walking around her neighborhood. Anytime I tried to call her house, no one ever picked up, but I wanted to talk to her and her parents and do something. Friday came and I went to her house after school. Seeing the place where we spent so many afternoons as kids playing broke my heart. I hadn't noticed before how much we had drifted apart. I rang the doorbell, determined to make things work again, but no one answered. I knew Hiren wasn't home, but her parents were supposed to be. The lights were on, after all. So I did something I'm not very proud of. I opened the door with the spare key they had under a plant vase and entered the house. As soon as I opened the door, I could feel in every single bone of my body that something was wrong. The putrid smell of decay entered my nostrils and filled my lungs until I almost puked. Walking through the house made me realize very quickly that whatever was rotting wasn't just the spoiled food in the sink or the trash that hadn't been taken out in weeks, but something much more sinister. I was genuinely afraid of what could have happened, knowing her parents would never let the house get this bad under any circumstances. I looked through the living room, kitchen, bathrooms, and her parents' bedroom and found everything just as messy, dirty, and stinky, but I couldn't yet figure out where the smell was coming from. The only place left to look was Hiren's bedroom. Like the rest of the house, it was filled with trash, dirty dishes, clothes everywhere. It was dark and the air was damp, but the smell of putrefaction was even stronger here. But before I looked through everything, I had the front door open and hid inside her wardrobe, letting only a small part open to see what was going on. I soon regretted my choice, as the rotting smell became absolutely unbearable. I could barely breathe inside the putrid, small and dark space, feeling something else brush against my skin and cause me shivers. However, there was no time to hide elsewhere. Hiren entered her bedroom in determined footsteps and took something out of the space under her bed. When I saw it, I didn't bother opening. It looked like a manicure kit or something like that, but it was something else entirely. She had knives, files, sewing needles and thread, scissors, and other things that didn't make a lot of sense at the time. Those things started to make sense as she proceeded to take a bottle filled with a yellow, thick and bloody liquid, and use a syringe to inject it into her cheeks and igiosal, and later her boobs. She looked so stuffed, as if about to burst. The procedures didn't stop, and now it was time for her legs. They were so skinny it was skin and bones at that point, but as I thought there was nothing else to take, Hiren started to use that same syringe to extract the yellow liquid from her legs and put it inside the bottle. It was then that I realized it was pus, and her wounds were so infected she was rotting inside, kept alive God knows how. Later on, I watched her cut right at her jawline with the small knife, tearing apart her skin, fat and muscles until she reached her bone. Blood dripped from the wound, soaking the paper-white skin of her bony shoulders. When the hole was big enough, she put the knife aside and got the nail file and started filing her bone. Little flakes of bone fell over her shoulders on the ground, almost like snow. The noise it made was so horrifying that I shiver even by just remembering it right now. I found courage I didn't know I had back then to prevent me from vomiting upon the sight. Every time blood soaked the bone too much to keep on working, she just got a piece of cloth to soak it off and keep on filing. By the end of it, her jaw was so thin it was impossible that she still had enough strength to bite and chew food. Though as she was satisfied, she got the needle and thread and started to sew the wound back closed, first the muscles and then the skin. And each time the needle went through her skin, crudely stitching it, it returned to normal as if there had been no incision, like magic. Suddenly there were no stitches, no blood, no scars, nothing at all, just smooth, ghostly white skin. While trying not to puke, I accidentally moved and something fell over me. A body. A rotting corpse, whose skin was melting away by the hot and humid weather. I recognized as her mother by the hair that kept falling over me. It wasn't just the two of us, as I soon knew, since her father was also there on my other side, and I kept seeing extra pieces of arms and legs that I can only assume are other people Hiren also murdered. The things that kept brushing against my skin weren't clothes. They were corpses, and I had to make them company while sitting through that horror show until she finally got tired of shaping herself to be as uncanny as a living thing can possibly be. After a few hours, Hiren had left for good, and I took enough courage to leave her wardrobe, running away from her house like a mad woman. I had seen something that cursed my eyes forever. Even now when I lie down to sleep I can still see and hear her filing her jawbone. It's a noise you can't forget, a sight you can't forget. No matter how many showers I take, I can never clean off the smell of a rotting corpse that reeks from my skin, even if just I can smell it. I don't know what to do or how to do, I only know one thing. Hiren must be stopped. Whatever monster she became, I can't let her exist like this. It's something I owe to the good, kind-hearted girl I was once friends with. I'm afraid that whatever humanity she had left is gone, and not even our years of friendship will be enough to protect me against her. Part 2. I was in a bad mental state when I wrote Part 1, not that I'm much better now, but at least I have more mental clarity. And I failed to inform that yes, I had called the police. Once I got home that day it was the first thing I did, in hopes that they would catch Hiren on time. But that didn't happen. Police found nothing but trash in her home, no corpses and not even a sign of the girl herself. And since she has also been missing ever since, they have no evidence or means to perform an arrest. I omitted the fact that she had been operating herself while I was hiding inside her wardrobe, as I don't want them to think I'm crazy and discard the things I've said. Her parents are now declared missing. About 2 weeks have passed since they last went to work, but as Hiren had called the business they work for to say they had a family emergency and would be out of the country for the month, they pressed no charges. Other people from the area have been missing as of recently at an alarming rate, including 2 children, but all they can do for now is search for any leads of the missing people, and Hiren as well. And quite frankly, I doubt the police can help. Whatever she has become isn't human anymore, and arresting her won't stop her. I've decided to take matters into my own hands and look for her. I'm neck deep into this mess, and now that she probably knows what I've seen, my life is in danger. My first idea was to see where she had done plastic surgery firstly during summer, if she really did go to a clinic instead of doing it herself. I knew her email address and password, so it was pretty easy to use a VPN. I'm not dumb enough to leave traces and log into her account. After that, I filtered her emails, searching for any clinics and hospitals she contacted. One of the exchanges stood out to me. I'm translating here exactly what was written, redacting their emails for privacy. From clinicsemail@dom.net to Hiren's email at dom.net. Dear Miss Hiren, we are here to confirm your appointment at 8 a.m. on Thursday, July 12th. Your payment has been approved as of today, and we are ready for your operation. We hope you the best luck. Clinic, redacted, telephone number. The text mentioned nothing about what kind of operation she was going to have, but a quick search showed me it was one of those cheap, unknown plastic surgery clinics, so it wasn't hard to figure it out. But what did they mean by payment? Hiren had no money. Her parents worked long shifts at work to provide for her. She had almost no savings, and somehow was paying thousands on expensive procedures. Something was clearly wrong, and either this was a scam, or she robbed a bank and didn't tell anyone else. I wrote down the address and stopped by today during the afternoon. The supposed clinic was nothing more than a rundown house. The paint was decrepit, the windows were small and dirty, the grass was slightly overgrown, and the curtains that blocked the view of the inside were thick and pulled all the way down. I had a bad feeling about it. As some of you suggested, I brought a pocket knife with me, but I wasn't so sure it would be very helpful against whatever could be inside. But I had to be brave, and I entered anyway, wishing for the best. Besides the receptionist, a tall boy with deep dark circles, there were only 2 other people inside, both women. One of them was in her mid-20s and had bandages all over her swollen face, while the other one was in her late 50s and seemed there to just make company for the younger girl. They both looked at me, uninterested, and I went straight to the receptionist. He probably wasn't much older than me, and I wondered what a boy my age was doing there. Clinic? Redacted. How can I help you? He asked. Actually, I'm here because a friend of mine had plastic surgery here before, and she told me if I gave her name I would receive a discount. I was lying shamelessly without even knowing if it would work. But if you know anything about desperation, you'd understand me. You have to try. And that apparently worked somehow. Yeah, what's her name? He said. I told him Hiren's full name and showed him a before and after picture of her, and that's when I knew I had gotten it. The boy looked terrified for a second, and he could barely breathe, let alone speak. After about 5 seconds of absolute silence, he looked over my shoulder to the 2 women sitting behind me, and, upon seeing their supposed indifference, he spoke in a softer, quieter tone. "When did she recommend you here?" "Last week." "Why?" I pretended to be innocent so much that it hurt. I could see the panic on his face become sheer horror. At that moment, one of the doors opened and another man called the women behind us. The receptionist then said to the man, that I assume was a doctor, in a deeply desperate tone, "I'm sorry, Dr. Seo, I'm having an emergency. Can I just leave for today? It's really important," said Dr. Seo complained but eventually let him go. And once we were both outside the clinic, the boy pushed me into an empty alley and just told me, "You're kidding, right? You haven't spoken to that girl last week, have you? This is impossible." "No, I'm being serious. I did speak to her last week, and she's missing now. Is there anything you want to tell me?" I was relieved to finally tell the truth, even if just partially. I had seen Hiren, even though I wish I hadn't, and she really was missing now. Whatever he knew was important enough that needed to be talked about privately. That girl died on the operation table. Listen, I'm not supposed to tell you this. Dr. Seo would kill me if he knew I told this to anyone. But she died of blood loss this summer while operating. Too many surgeries at once, and this is what happens. It's not the first time. The thing is that she never mentioned she was a minor and he never asked. Her parents probably didn't even know she signed up for this, because the contact numbers were all fake. If police knew about it, Dr. Seo would lose his license, so he buried her. Whoever this person you spoke to is, this isn't her, because she's dead. I was taken by surprise for a moment, but at the same time, part of me already knew that the Hiren I knew and loved was dead. Before, I thought it was just metaphorically, though now it seems it's more literal than I'd ever dreamed. However, I needed proof that she died and that this wasn't part of an elaborate scam to fool me. There's no way it isn't her. I saw it. It's her face, her body, her voice. It's her. No impersonator can be that good. You either prove me or I call it bullshit. I can prove, but if you call the police, you're dead, and I'm dead. Dr. Seo said he would imply me as his assistant in the surgery if I ever told someone, even though I did nothing, so I'm fucked as well. You can't tell anyone this. I paid my price when I decided to be compliant, and now I can't sleep. Guilt is eating me from the inside out. Living with the guilt is good enough of a punishment for me. He basically begged. If you want to see, I can show you where she's buried, but you have to promise me to keep quiet. Following a stranger, especially a man, into somewhere I didn't know when it was already dark wasn't probably a good idea, but if I wanted to see it with my own eyes instead of just trusting his words, I knew I had to go without questioning even further. I didn't know when or if I would have that opportunity again. I had to dare to know. I followed him into another street, not far from where the clinic is, and we arrived at an empty lot, with overgrown grass and trash piled up. That was the place where they buried her. We walked inside the lot, taking care with each step as to not step over garbage piles or worse. At the corner, next to a rusty fence, there was a part of the ground that had a pile of trash bags over it, but no grass underneath. "It's here," he said. "But I won't dig anything." After 5 minutes of removing the bags and digging with my own hands, He decided to help me as well, or else we wouldn't be finished in a single night. Soon enough we reached something hard, like wood, and we found what we had been looking for. A big wooden box was the improvised coffin that had Hiren's body and her personal belongings. Only that inside the box, there was no body to be found. We found her purse, her cell phone, her wallet, a little rosary she had ever since she was little, and her clothes. The shirt I gave her on her last birthday, her favorite sandals, the skirt she said was her lucky one. The things that made Hiren the person she used to be, and that now are part of the past, long forgotten. Something inside me hurt when I saw all of the little things that were so precious to her reduced to trash, thrown away with so little care, but I didn't have time to be sad. Fear took over me once it really hit me that Hiren wasn't buried here. Somehow she made it outside of the grave, and I wasn't the only one panicking. You were right, she's alive. Who knows how, but she's fucking alive, the receptionist said. But where the hell is she now? The answer to that question was something I dreaded. For a person that just a minute ago talked about daring to know, I'm a damn big coward, but I have never been more afraid of what could happen to me and to the people around me. We walked together until I was close to my home, parting ways at a gas station, with a promise that I wouldn't tell the police that Hiren is not dead, but should be. According to his testimony, it's completely impossible that she was alive, simply because Dr. Seo cut her into pieces to fit into the box, as to not raise suspicion. If she didn't die in surgery, there's no way she left the clinic alive. You can't survive that. Whatever came to school past summer wasn't her already, and the rejection only made it descent into madness. My parents were working late, as they always are on weekdays, though I'm used to dining alone. At least for now, it would be good to have time to think alone, but I couldn't help but feel scared and defenseless like this. I tried to take my mind off of it by turning on the TV and putting on some music, although nothing really helped. The feeling of uneasiness just faded into the background noise. And while I was preparing dinner, I received a text from a number I knew so well, the first message in a long time. Only this time, no friendly banter, but a threat. It was a picture of me and the receptionist, walking together on the street, with the caption, "Having fun with your little boyfriend." Immediately after receiving the message, I did what I thought was reasonable and called the police, to warn them I was receiving threats from a supposedly missing person. At least this way they could trace the location of the phone when the text was sent, even if I already knew Hiren was following me and probably close by. My parents ended up arriving soon after the police left and, not wanting to get them involved in this mess, I told them someone tried to break into the house while they were out. This way it was easier to convince them to throw away the food. After all, I can't be sure she hadn't messed with anything inside the house. I can't tell them my friend died and became a bloody monster that wants me dead. Not if I want them to take me seriously. Anyway, I ended up sending a text to the receptionist, Dae-sung, to warn him about it. His life was probably in danger as well, and I couldn't just leave him in the dark. Each minute I had to wait before he replied was a torture, and in my mind, I could only imagine the gruesome ways Hiren could have killed him in the meantime. Anxiety was eating me alive, and my empty stomach was starting to feel worse than ever. When he finally replied, he was pretty shocked to hear that the person who sent that picture was the girl he helped bury months ago, and that she had also been following us. More than shocked, it's safe to say he was afraid, and didn't want me to know. As the night went on and neither of us could sleep, I decided to lead the conversation somewhere I wanted. I needed to know what exactly happened the day that Hiren died, why that happened, how did she get so much money. Luckily for me, I ended up knowing something that truly helped me. Dr. Seo was Dae-sung's estranged father. Their relationship had never been great, though Hiren's death was the final straw. Dae-sung wanted to tell the truth, but his father wanted otherwise. Talk about a bastard. Huh? Threatening to frame your own son to the police because you fucked up? Anyways, I digress, it's the lack of sleep. Apparently, Hiren just got there the day before surgery with a suitcase full of money. It wasn't uncommon to have patients appear with a large amount of money at once. Many got illegal loans to obtain the sum, although she never made it clear where the money came from, and it was their policy to never ask. The day of the surgery, everything seemed to be fine until 2 hours after the start of the procedures, when Dr. Seo came out of the surgery room screaming and seeming out of his mind. He had ruptured a big artery and there was no way to stop the bleeding. Hiren died before they both could do anything. Then came something that surprised me. As they both discussed whether or not they should call the police, they heard a faint whispering and saw that it was Hiren's body producing the sound. At that point, Dae-sung said, she was already dead and had no heartbeat at all, but was still moving her lips. It was then that Dr. Seo decided to cut her up into pieces and dispose of the body, regardless of his son's ideas. After that happened, he insisted that what they saw was completely natural. Dead bodies move sometimes because of rigor mortis and gas production. Dae-sung never believed him because, well, dead people don't move like that, and frankly, I doubt even Dr. Seo believed it. But his father cut her body alone. Inside the surgery room, he wouldn't stomach the sight, the doctor told him, while he prepared the wooden box to bury her. A morbid curiosity took over me, and I asked what did she whisper in her supposed final moments. She was praying the Lord's Prayer. Dawn came without further notice. My parents left for work and I only remembered I had school when my alarm rang. I felt tempted to pretend nothing was happening, go to school and live a normal school day in a normal life, but I couldn't bring myself to it. This story was getting more and more bizarre each time I uncovered a new layer, and pretending there weren't so many things at stake right now wouldn't help. I decided I needed to meet Dae-sung, and I asked him a favor I wasn't sure he could do, to bring the suitcase, not the money, really just the suitcase, when we meet. If there had to be clue as to how she earned that absurd amount of money, the suitcase was it. It needed to be made somewhere, sold somewhere, bought by someone, and this connection would sure lead us somewhere. I just needed to know exactly where. We met at the same gas station of before, and I was surprised he complied to my wish and brought the suitcase. It was a beautiful leather piece, carefully crafted, and I was right to think this was our lead. It was probably very expensive and handcrafted, not something you would buy at any store. Whoever made this has few clients and we have a bigger chance of knowing who bought it. We just needed to know where to look for. Isn't there a tag or something? A logo or whatever on the outside? It's what fancy brands do, Dae-sung suggested. The outside had no visible writing, because of the carefully sewn-on pattern of flowers all around the surface. Since the leather wasn't damaged, I can only assume no tags were removed. On the inside, the suitcase was covered with a velvety type of fabric in a bright red color. I was about to quit searching when I finally found a very small tag that only had a combination of 7 numbers in it, instead of a brand name. What could these 7 numbers be? It's not big enough to be a date or a resident registration number, but too big to be an age. Our best shot was a telephone number, so I did the obvious and dialed it. It took so long for the other person to pick it up that I was about to hang up. But suddenly a girl with a soft voice talked to me. Here's the place where all your dreams come true. How can I help you today? Who am I talking to? And where is exactly here? I asked the girl. With the phone call on speaker mode, Dae-sung seemingly listened to what was going on, as confused as I was. As I expected a store, I was sure I would be greeted with at least the store's name, not with whatever the hell this cryptid message meant. The girl laughed in a quietly yet menacing tone. You were the one to call me, you should know who and where you called to, shouldn't you? And for me to pick it up, that means your heart must have really wished for it. You must be truly desperate to seek something from me. Only the desperate do. I think you already know who you are speaking to. Don't you, Jun? A shiver ran down my spine, making my stomach feel as cold as ice, when that woman spoke my name. The way she pronounced was so vile, so terrible it felt violatingly unholy. I felt the same hopelessness and fear a person must feel when falling from a great height, knowing there's nothing they can do to stop the fall. I can't say my family was religious at all, but it's hard to not know true evil when you see or hear it. It's something you sense from the bottom of your heart. There's no confusion and no uncertainty when you face it. You just know. Call it the devil or whatever you want. This soft-spoken girl was the one who brought an end to Hiren's life. I immediately hung up, my fingers so shaky and cold from the fright I almost missed the button. But Dae-sung didn't understand at all why I was afraid. If there's something up there looking out for us, it decided to shield and protect him, something I'm very thankful for. He was blissfully unaware of what had just happened. Wait, what happened? Who were you talking to? You didn't hear anything at all? I asked him. No, I just heard static, and you speaking to someone else. Never mind then, we won't get anything from this. Just go home and take care of yourself. I still have something else to do. I told him, "Take this suitcase and burn it. It's the best thing you can do." Believe me, I left without caring to explain what I had meant. I think deep down, Dae-sung already understood my message and the fear he saw in my eyes. He already knew Hyerin had stepped to the lowest of low for the sake of vanity, unaware of the consequences of her actions and desires. Isn't there a saying that goes, "Be careful what you wish for"? That's exactly it. What can hear you may twist your words in their benefit. To Hyerin, having plastic surgery that day was her goal, but to whatever picked up my call and heard her prayers, that was only a means to drive her to madness. The people that have died were merely obstacles to it. At this point, I'm finally completely aware of what's been going on. What is she, and how to stop her? And I understand it's something I must do. It's something I owe to the girl I was friends with, that I'm sure it's long gone, consumed by her own madness. I am home right now, alone. My parents won't be here this night, and I've sent Hyerin a text, telling her we need to meet. I know Shivi read my message and she will show up. It's something I'm certain of. I just hope Dae-sung listened to my pleas and doesn't come here. Everything is prepared, and if it all goes according to the plan, the final part of this tale will be up tomorrow. If not, it means I've failed my task. I'm trying to remain optimistic while waiting for her, as time seems to flow at a slower pace right now, and I have more time to think of everything that could go wrong. But I can't let myself freak out. I need to focus. When time comes, I have to be prepared to send the dead back to death. I'd realized pretty quickly that the only way to bring Hyerin down was to destroy her vanity, and the best way to do it was giving her the face and body she'd always had. That wasn't an idea I had in the spur of the moment. Rather, it was something I already knew deep down. I just wasn't ready to accept it yet. Once I finished that call, though, any uncertainty I had vanished. I'd either do it and end it all, or have whatever Hyerin became remain a puppet and destroy everything that crossed its path. My choice was obvious. During the afternoon, I went back to Hyerin's house and got her astonishing plastic surgery kit. I had to avoid Suspect Ion and jumped over the backyard fence instead of using the front door, that had been locked and covered by the police. After that, it was pretty easy to enter the house through the kitchen window, that had a broken lock and couldn't be closed properly. Get what I wanted and leave, and no one would suspect a thing. Not with gloves, at least. As expected, no one was home to surprise me. Then, I had only to prepare myself physically and mentally for my guest to arrive. Night fell and I started to lose faith that Hyerin would come. I thought she was going to play me and never show up, but I was wrong. It was already late, close to midnight, when the doorbell rang. I ran to open the door but found no one there. A noise upstairs is what caught my attention next, and I understood it was her, of course, sitting in my bed while cutting her nails with a small knife. She had done much more to her face after we last met. Now her nose was so pointy and skinny it would be impossible for a human being to breathe through it, and she had shaven her jaw even more to match the freaky look. You could even see the outline of her posterior teeth's roots pressing against her skin, where the jaw was shaved so thinly it became more of a veil than a bone. Her double eyelids were stitched so high and so firmly it was hard for her to blink, making her look perpetually awake and surprised. "So you want to stop me? You want me to become uglier so you can be the pretty one again, huh?" she said, in an angry and nasty tone. I was trying hard to not piss her off, being as cautious as possible. "That's not what I want, and you know that. You need to wake up." It clearly didn't work, and Hyerin just jumped at my neck, pinning me to the ground. She was never strong, but in that moment, she was the strongest a human can ever be, fueled by her hate and madness. She was going to choke me if I refused to do something, so I did. I stabbed her with the pocket knife I had been carrying ever since the beginning of this madness. In a second she had let go of me, and I did what I had already been planning to do. I tied her up to my bed to start the procedures. The look of betrayal in her face almost discouraged me from doing what was right, and for that moment of trickery, I almost believed it was really my friend back from the dead. But as soon as betrayal gave up to hate, I was more sure than ever I had to do what was right. I prepared her equipment after gagging her and tying up her legs as well. The syringes and needles, nail files, the bottle of pus, cotton balls, knives, needle and thread, and of course her own makeup. For some reason, a strange thought popped up in my head that I was almost doing a YouTube tutorial on beauty. I remember we used to joke about doing a joint channel for that. I would be the model and hire in the makeup artist behind the scenes. But now, things would be a little different, and I only hoped my skills would be good enough to transform her back into the person she used to be, instead of making it worse. I decided to start with something easy. Removing the fillers in her nose, chin, cheek, egiosal and boobs. All I had to do was take the syringe and needle and carefully suck the mixture of pus and blood she had been injecting into her body. By the end of it, I was glad I had taken another bottle, a 5 liters one, because it simply would not fit the small 500 milliliters one she had been filing up with her homemade chemical. There was so much pus I was surprised she wasn't as soft to the touch as she should have been. You know the texture of swollen skin, right? When you press it down, you can feel the liquid underneath, and as soon as you let go, it goes back to being what it was. I was afraid that I was going to throw up everything in my stomach, but I somehow ended up not feeling nauseous at all while going through this. Next, I tackled her legs. Her legs were never thick like mine, but they had never been literal skin and bones like they were now. Doing the exact opposite of what she'd done before in front of my terrified eyes that day, I injected the liquid back into her legs, shaping them with my hands like they used to be. The more the bottle's liquid was exposed to oxygen, the worse it reeked of. In a few minutes it smelled like death, as if I was smelling a true corpse, only liquefied. After getting her legs back to normal, the wounds caused by the multiple needle holes healed quickly, disappearing right in front of my eyes. After that, the most problematic part, the one I had been dreading the most, her face. After the fillers had been removed, certain areas of her face sunk, as the skin over the liquid stretched to accommodate it, and I knew I had to do something about it, but not for now. I was sure the skin would end up stretching anyways when I was finished with her jaw. The eyes were pretty simple, all I had to do was cut the eyelids and stitch them back how they used to be, a monolid on her right eye and a tapered double eyelid on her left eye. Unlike traditional plastic surgery, where you have the opportunity to undo the stitching and do it again as many times as you need to make sure it's perfect, I had to work against the clock and against her healing skill. I couldn't do perfect, so I could only hope and aim for the best my hands would offer me. Now it was finally time for the jaw, what I had been avoiding since the beginning. To do this, I had to remove the gag. "Promise me you won't scream, okay?" I begged her. My only answer was almost being bitten in my hand. I was afraid like I had never been before, afraid I couldn't bring myself to it. Ever since that day, I couldn't sleep and rest at all. Every time I closed my eyes, I would only hear the sound of Hiren filing her jaw, and I would see it in my dreams. The thought of it haunted me. There are certain things that you can never forget, and even now, it's like she's sanding her bone into oblivion forever and ever, and I doubt I will ever be able to sleep and close my eyes peacefully, without remembering the unsavory sight of that dreadful day. When I cut into her skin and saw blood soaking through my hands and my bedsheets, I had to stop and puke for the first time that day, and it wouldn't be the last. I knew I was going to run out of pus to simply fill in her jaw and shape it like it used to be, so I had to be creative and make up something that would fill up the void where her bone used to be. Cotton balls. They didn't have the same density as bones, but at this point, it was the best I had in mind. So I opened a hole big enough to fit several cotton balls and shaped them into the square jaw she used to have, until I was satisfied. The blood that soaked my hands was thick and dark, and the slightly rotten smell of it made my stomach even more upset. However, this wasn't even the worst part yet. Sewing the hole closed was. The muscles and skin were slippery from the blood, and the needle required a lot of force to go through Hiren's skin. More than once I almost pricked my fingers, and by the end of it, I wasn't sure whether or not I had been sewing the right muscles back together, since my own tears had been clouding my vision. Not that it really matters anyway, as her jaw was unusable regardless. I finished the suture through blood, tears, and puke, and I felt emotionally and physically exhausted by the unholy task. The only thing left to do was do her makeup, to truly transform Hiren back into the person she used to be. Dark foundation, crisp black eyeliner, pink apricot lip balm, and shimmery eyeshadow. By the end of the process, I was impressed not only with my skills, but also because of how much she now resembled her old self, almost a carbon copy of the girl she used to be. At that point, I didn't know what else to do. I was hoping, somehow, that transforming her back into the person she used to be would magically bring her back, and any memories I had left of this horror show would be erased. But things didn't work out quite as I planned. Hiren was still there, a shell of her former self, hissing at me truly like an animal. I thought I had failed, and made her go through that torture for nothing but my own delusions. So I untied her. You're probably thinking this is where things went wrong, and, in a sense, you're right, but that was also our key to freedom. Hiren stabbed me with the small knife she had been hiding since the beginning, and I stabbed her with my pocket knife. It wouldn't be the first time we hurt each other, but it would be the last. One thing that people never tell you about being stabbed is how little it actually hurts when the object is still inside you. Be it because of adrenaline or something else, I only felt pain when she pulled back the knife and I started bleeding. Before that, I only felt a weird type of pressure on my insides. But I had always been stronger than Hiren, and I pushed my knife further inside her abdomen than she did. I'd like to think she was controlling herself as to not kill me, but this is something I can never be sure of. Then, things became blurry and I lost all strength I had in my legs. There was also this strange ringing noise in my ears that I later realized was the doorbell. I've heard screams and saw Dae-sung there, calling the ambulance. After that, there was a long period of silence, interrupted by Hiren's dying whisper of, "Thank you," until I woke up hours later in the hospital. I thought that, and the moment when she became dust in between my fingers had been only a hallucination. But two people can't hallucinate the exact same thing. I woke up hours later, in the hospital, with my parents right beside me, tons of police officers and a suffocating feeling. I didn't have the courage to tell the whole truth because, well, I think you understand me. I just told them Hiren attacked me and left, while Dae-sung corroborated my story. He had actually come to see me that night because Hiren had paid the clinic a visit earlier in the night and killed his father before he even had a chance to defend himself. He thought it was worth telling me she was ready to kill me. I didn't have the heart to tell him that she had all the chances of killing me during the evening. She just chose not to. It's something we owe to each other as friends, that undying loyalty. I don't know how things are going to work out, if it's really worth to tell about Dr. Seo's malpractice of medicine, or if it's better to leave things buried as they are. All I can say for now is that if my parents had any hope I'd become a doctor, they're really, really wrong. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for upcoming videos. Stay tuned for more.